Chapter 1. My wife's late-night affair with her old college classmate was so intense that it caused him to have a sudden, fatal heart attack, and he died on top of her. When I received the emergency call, I was the first to arrive on the scene, immediately starting CPR on the patient. The moment I touched him, however, I realized he had been dead for some time. "Quack, you're the one who killed him," my wife, Victoria Vaughn, screamed at me, but her eyes glinted with a vicious, calculating light. After that, I was branded a quack doctor. She and the Hayes family conspired to crush me, leaving me homeless on the streets, where I was eventually beaten to death by a beggar over a piece of bread. This time, I will stop them before they can even get together. She won't pin that crime on me again. As I broke free from the nightmarish truth of my past life, my dead heart slowly began to beat again. My wife Victoria's incessant chatter buzzed in my ears like thousands of ants gnawing at my flesh, sending a bone-deep ache through my limbs. "Sincere, where's the dress I asked you to iron? I'm about to go out with my friends. How can I leave the house looking this shabby?" Hearing that familiar tone and attitude, I clenched my teeth and stood up, my fists tight with rage. I remembered how, in my past life, her late-night passion led to my name being dragged through the mud. Right now, I wanted nothing more than to smash her face in. Hearing my heavy breathing, Victoria raised an eyebrow and then shot me a look of pure contempt. "What, you're getting angry? Because I said a few words? A grown man getting upset all the time, you're so pathetic. How could I have been so blind to marry a useless man like you, Victoria? Always short-tempered with me," pointed a finger at my face, nearly poking me in the eye. Her once beautiful face was now twisted and ugly. I concealed the cold fury in my eyes and said sarcastically, "You rely on me for everything you eat, wear, and use, and you have the nerve to curse me." My words made Victoria explode. Her face flushed red as she shrieked at me, "What's gotten into you? Hurry up and iron my dress. If you make me late for my date, I'll make you pay." I stared coldly at her heavily made-up face. It wasn't even evening. Yet she was already that desperate to pounce on her dear classmate. It was a shame that in our past life she drained him so thoroughly he died on top of her. I would not allow myself to be framed and disgraced again. I deliberately softened my tone. "It's our son's birthday today. Why don't you stay home and celebrate with him?" At the mention of our son, Victoria's face darkened. Her eyes filled with annoyance as she snapped, "He can celebrate his birthday any day. A date with my friends is a rare occasion. Stop bothering me." With that, she shoved a sexy, alluring gown into my hands. Hearing her self-righteous excuse, a mocking smile crept onto my lips. With a look of disgust, I threw the dress back in her face. The suffocating anger in my chest eased slightly. Victoria let out a hysterical scream and lunged at me. As if I were some unforgivable sinner, she grabbed my collar roughly and raised her hand to slap me. She had absolutely no respect for me, her husband. She was a pathological liar, shamelessly dressing up for Ethan Hayes, and she still expected me to follow her around like a servant, catering to her every need. In her dreams, hatred surged through me again. Before her hand could connect with my face, I slapped her first, with lightning speed. Hearing the crisp sound of the slap, I narrowed my eyes. It felt so damn good to finally unleash my frustration on the person closest to me. Victoria, one side of her face red and swollen, fell to the floor in a heap. Her eyes were bloodshot with rage, her face a mask of disbelief. "You actually dared to hit me?" Chapter 2. I smirked coldly, looking down at Victoria, whose swollen cheek was stained with tears. My voice was ice. "Ever since we got married, you've done nothing but hit and curse me for years. It's just one slap. Can't you take it?" The painful memories of my past life wrapped around my neck like a venomous snake. The more I struggled, the tighter it squeezed. The agony was unbearable, yet I couldn't break free. Meeting my mocking gaze, Victoria's eyes darted away, a flicker of guilt showing through. She muttered a curse under her breath, unable to justify herself, and finally went to iron the wrinkles out of her dress herself. Then, dressed seductively, she swayed her hips and walked out the door. I asked a colleague to cover my shift for the night. Catching cheaters in the act was too interesting an event for the legal husband to miss. After settling our son, I used my memories from my past life to find the hotel where Victoria and Ethan Hayes were meeting. I timed it perfectly, knocking on their door at midnight. The sounds of their passionate struggle were clearly audible even through the door. After experiencing death, any feelings I had for her had been buried by her own hands. The pain of betrayal was now consumed by hatred. The only thing left in my mind was revenge. An unguarded Ethan Hayes opened the door. He had nothing but a towel wrapped around his lower body, his bare torso covered in scratches and bite marks. It looked like they had already finished round one. Victoria's hoarse voice called out curiously, "Ethan, is that hotel staff at the door?" Meeting his malicious eyes, I smiled silently. He was smart. Although it was the first time we had met, he guessed my identity in an instant. I feigned outrage, my face grim. Holding up my phone, I forcefully pushed past Ethan, who was blocking the doorway. Radiating a chilling aura, I appeared before Victoria. I roared at her, "So this is your date? A date with a man in bed? Did you have fun?" No matter how strong her nerves were, being caught cheating by her husband who suddenly burst in was a scene straight out of a soap opera. It made her face turn incredibly ugly. She stared blankly for a few seconds after I yelled, then shrieked and pulled the covers over her naked body. When she saw the sneer in my eyes, her already pale face flushed a deep crimson. Both men in the room had slept with her. There wasn't a part of each other's bodies we hadn't seen. And she had the nerve to be shy? You're his mother, yet you skip your own son's birthday to come here for a late-night passion play with another man. Are you that desperate? My voice was tight with suppressed rage. I was asking for our son, and even more so, for the man I was in my past life. She had worked a man to death, and in just half an hour she had devised a meticulous plan to successfully pin everything on me. Sometimes, the person sleeping next to you has a heart more venomous than anyone else. At that thought, the hatred inside me reached its peak. Seeing my bloodshot eyes and the violent energy surrounding me, Victoria swallowed nervously, her fingertips turning white as she gripped the blanket tighter. She bit her lip, feigning innocence, still maintaining her shameless attitude. "I'm just having a little fun. Is it really such a big deal? Life is so boring. What's wrong with me finding some entertainment? Now get out and go home to your son. Is there any point in making a scene like this?" Her words made me laugh, a bitter, angry laugh. My eyes were filled with malice. A hand patted my shoulder lightly. Ethan Hayes circled around me. He made a tisk-tisk sound, then said provocatively, "She's just having a little fun. Legally, she's still your wife. Being so petty, you're going to give us men a bad name." The two of them sang the same tune, painting their affair as something righteous and open, without a shred of shame. During the standoff, I smelled a salty, metallic scent in the air, and my stomach churned. After getting the evidence of Victoria's affair on camera, I gave Ethan a pointed warning, "Be careful you don't exhaust yourself to death." I glanced meaningfully below his waist and let out a disdainful laugh. The door behind me was slammed shut by an enraged Ethan, making a deafening noise. Immediately after, Victoria's seductive moans echoed from inside, growing louder and louder. They were doing it on purpose, trying to humiliate me. But for someone I no longer cared about, I felt no pain or sadness at all. Chapter 3. After returning home, I posted the video of the affair on my social media feed, making sure everyone could see it. For the first time in ages, I had a good night's sleep. When I opened my phone in the morning, hundreds of messages flooded in, the notification sound ringing non-stop. My colleague who covered for me last night, David Miller, saw that I wasn't as devastated as he had expected. He breathed a sigh of relief and comforted me. "So you skipped your shift last night to catch your wife cheating. It's a good thing you're leaving a promiscuous woman like that. No need to hang yourself over one tree. It's just disgusting how they talked about cheating so casually." I spit on them, watching my good friend vent his anger at Victoria. I just smiled calmly and continued with my work. Even an outsider was this furious, yet my heart, which had long grown cold, felt nothing. Around noon, my phone, which was sitting on the side, started ringing incessantly. It was Victoria. Calling to confront me at this hour meant that after I left last night, the two of them must have had another go at it, exhausting themselves like dogs and only just waking up. Half an hour later, Victoria stormed up to me, her face dark with anger. She ground out her words through clenched teeth. "What gives you the right to post my private business on your social media?" I calmly ate my lunch from the hospital cafeteria, glancing indifferently at Victoria, who was consumed by a towering rage. In a surprisingly good mood, I curved my lips into a smile and raised an eyebrow, giving her a provocative look. My tone was dripping with sarcasm. "So you're brave enough to do it, but not to admit it. I didn't realize you had any shame left. After speaking, my gaze fell on their tightly clasped hands. I spoke again, my voice laced with mockery, publicly bringing your lover, the other man, to the hospital where I work to question me, the legal husband, for exposing your affair. Victoria, are you out of your goddamn mind? I deliberately raised my voice, causing all my colleagues eating in the cafeteria to stretch their necks and watch the show. Victoria's expression faltered for a moment, then she quickly regained her composure, a look of brazen confidence returning to her face. Seeing Victoria at a loss, Ethan Hayes, her lover, stepped forward protectively, a look of feigned concern on his face, and began to criticize me righteously. Victoria is, after all, just a woman who needs affection. Is it wrong for her to want someone to love her at night? As her husband, you show her no concern at all. What right do you have to accuse her of making a mistake? Hearing Ethan's twisted logic and distortion of the facts, I couldn't help but laugh. For 8 years of marriage outside of work, I revolved my life around Victoria. Now that she had latched onto the wealthier Ethan Hayes, she was starting to look down on my income as a surgeon. Her materialistic, gold-digging nature really hadn't changed one bit. Before I could retort, Victoria stood on her tiptoes and gave Ethan a passionate kiss right in front of me, using her body to make her position clear. This insane couple deserved each other. They should just stay locked together and stop ruining my life. I let out a cold snort, looking at them as if they were trash. Seeing my reaction, a flash of malice crossed Victoria's eyes, which I caught clearly. Her eyes blazed as she stared at me, her voice turning cold. Delete the video. I just smiled at her nonchalantly and said, word by word, no, right in front of her. I pinned the video to the top of my feed and set it to be permanently public. I wanted her to be forever nailed to a pillar of shame, to be ridiculed by everyone. Seeing my actions, Victoria's eyes turned red with fury. She reached out to snatch my phone, her long nails leaving a bloody scratch on the back of my hand from which beads of blood began to well up. Seeing me wince in pain, she looked triumphant, the smirk on her face barely forming before it vanished. She had discovered that my phone's unlock code was no longer her birthday. She tried my birthday and our son's, one by one, but they all showed incorrect password. She was so angry her chest heaved violently, looking as if she could grind her teeth to dust. She could rack her brain forever and never guess the real password. It was the date of my tragic death in my previous life. I wanted to constantly remind myself of the vengeance I was owed. Unable to guess the password, a frustrated Victoria smashed my phone on the ground in front of me. To vent her anger further, she deliberately stomped on it. After all that, she shot me a defiant look. Meeting my calm, placid expression, her face flushed red. She had lost her composure. I added fuel to the fire, taunting her. Smashing the phone won't make the video disappear. Don't waste your energy. Chapter 4. Victoria froze on the spot, clutching her head in defeat. Then, as if remembering something, a triumphant smirk crept onto her face. Her expression immediately shifted to one of anguish, and her voice became sharp and piercing. You can't even last a few minutes yourself, and you always make me fake it for you. I kept it a secret for the sake of our marriage, but since you won't let me go, I have no reason to cover for you anymore. Victoria's talent for fabricating lies was truly masterful. She held her head high, looking at me with smug satisfaction. Ethan, a calculating look hidden in his eyes, chimed in. She complained to me about you not being able to perform when she was writhing in pleasure beneath me. You can't even satisfy your own wife. Yet you have the nerve to blame her for cheating with a look of complete indifference. I calmly accepted the mocking glances from those around me. Tired of arguing with her, I decided I might as well help a certain someone achieve their goal ahead of schedule. A divorce, I'll grant you your wish, you cheating dogs. Victoria was surprised for a moment, then her face broke into a grin so wide it almost split her face. She completely ignored the sarcasm in my words. She pouted and said, It's about time you came to your senses. You can have custody of the son. I get annoyed just looking at his face. He looks too much like you. Ethan joyfully pulled her into his arms, a look of triumph barely concealed behind his tender gaze. Victoria and I divorced quickly. When we were dividing our marital assets, she deliberately insulted me, calling me a poor devil and saying she couldn't care less about my paltry sum of money. On the very day of our divorce, she and Ethan held an incredibly lavish wedding. She was gloating, thinking she had married into a wealthy family, completely unaware that the wedding of the sole heir to a truly rich family would never be so hastily arranged. After becoming a wealthy man's wife, Victoria couldn't wait to flaunt her riches. posting on social media 8 times a day. She was decked out in designer brands from head to toe, as if trying to blind everyone with her new status. She made a point of showing off in front of me, constantly putting me down to praise Ethan. "Your entire year's salary can't even buy one of my handbags. That's just the difference between people. I truly regret not leaving you, you poor bastard, sooner." Her condescending attitude made me laugh in disbelief. For 8 years of our marriage, I gave her my entire salary, did all the housework, and loved her unconditionally with all my heart. Yet none of it could compare to the allure of Ethan's money. To be so heartless, she would surely face retribution one day. My son, Miles Clark, held my hand and looked up at Victoria with longing eyes. He whispered cautiously, "Mommy, when are you coming home? I miss you so much." Unexpectedly, Victoria slapped our son to the ground right in front of me. The impact made him cry out in pain, and his forehead was cut, blood slowly trickling down. The sight of it made my eyes turn red with rage. How dare she? That was her own flesh and blood. I could no longer contain my towering fury. I kicked her so hard she fell flat on her face, then grabbed her by the hair and gave her a vicious slap. "Are you even human? He's just a child who doesn't know any better, and you dare take your anger out on him?" My crazed state terrified Victoria. She trembled, her face instantly turning ashen. Pinned beneath me, she struggled desperately, her expensive designer dress becoming a wrinkled mess. Suddenly, a sharp pain exploded at the back of my head. My vision went black, and I collapsed to the side. Ethan stood over me, looking down with a disdainful sneer. Countless fragments of the broken vase pierced my skin. A dense wave of pain washed over my entire body, and cold sweat beaded on my forehead. Ethan, with a look of concern, helped Victoria up from the ground, but his first glance was towards her flat stomach. I smirked silently. Victoria thought she had married for love. I couldn't wait to see her reaction when the bloody truth was finally revealed. The moment she was back on her feet, Victoria kicked me hard in the face. Her eyes burned with intense malice. "Sincere, you dare to hit me? You're asking for it, enduring the pain." I rolled over to dodge another kick and gritted my teeth as I climbed back to my feet. Seeing that I had dodged, she shot me a venomous glare and yelled, "What kind of man hits a woman? Stand still and don't move." When I seemed to obey her, standing motionless with a dark expression, she gave a triumphant smile and rushed forward to slap me. "Slap!" she shrieked, clutching her face, unable to believe I had slapped her again. "This one is for our son. You don't deserve to be a mother. Even savage beasts don't harm their own young. You're worse than an animal." My barrage of insults made Victoria's face a kaleidoscope of colors, shifting from red to white. Ethan stood to the side, watching us with an amused expression. When Victoria looked at him with a pitiful expression, he immediately changed his demeanor. He lovingly wiped away her tears, suppressing his own annoyance and contempt, and cooed, "Don't cry, baby. It's a good thing you divorced a scumbag like him." Before leaving, Victoria threw one last threat over her shoulder as she walked away arrogantly. "This isn't over. I'll get you back for this sooner or later." Staring at their retreating backs, rage surged through my chest. Recalling Ethan's "let's watch the show" attitude, I knew her days of glory wouldn't last long. This isn't over. I'll be waiting for her downfall. Chapter 5. A month later, Victoria made a point of telling me she was pregnant. Stroking her still flat abdomen, she was completely lost in a fabricated sense of happiness. This child would be the beginning of her ruin. Seeing my indifferent expression, she gave me a meaningful smile. Like a peacock showing off its feathers, she swayed her hips and left. The next day, while I was at work, Victoria took our son to the Hayes' house. 5 hours later, I received a photo of my son, and it felt like I had been struck by lightning. How could she? When I arrived, she was sitting on a chair, swinging her legs with a row of bodyguards in black suits standing behind her. My son was covered in injuries, so much blood that it stained the grass red. He lay on the ground unconscious. The tightly wound thread in my brain snapped. Fury screamed through my mind. She had abused her own son just to vent her anger. My blood ran cold. I looked at her in disbelief. Our eyes met, and I clearly saw the blatant provocation in hers. "I have a new son now. The blood of a low-class person like you runs in his veins, and it's a disgrace to me." A dull ache spread through my chest. I carefully picked up my unconscious son. A feeling of near suffocating despair washed over me. When I looked up, my eyes were filled with hatred as I glared at the arrogant Victoria. At that moment, I wanted to kill her. My voice was unconsciously tinged with fury. I trembled with rage, my eyes bloodshot. I deliberately taunted her. Without a child, how long do you think the Hayes family will tolerate you? When she realized what I meant, her expression turned to one of rage. She coldly ordered the bodyguards behind her. Beat him up for me. If he upsets me and something happens to the baby in my belly, Ethan will not forgive you. I watched coldly as she put on the airs of a wealthy madam, a sarcastic smile playing on my lips. She used her power to bully others, so it was only natural that I teach her a lesson. On my way there, I had already called the police and given them the address. As expected, police sirens wailed outside the villa, and officers with serious expressions walked up to the crowd. With such a commotion, the Hayes family could no longer play deaf and dumb. The 3 members of the Hayes family came out of the villa, their faces displeased. Seeing this, Victoria showed no sign of panic. She warmly took the arm of a stone-faced Margaret Hayes. She said fawningly, "Mom, you're not well. Why did you come out? It's windy out here. Be careful not to catch a cold." Margaret Hayes listlessly shook off her hand, her tone cold and laced with anger. "Have you forgotten all the rules we taught you? Using the Hayes family name to throw your weight around?" Terrified by the furious Mrs. Hayes, Victoria's face turned pale, and she shrank back in fear. It seemed she wasn't as powerful in the Hayes household as she pretended to be. My oppressed mood suddenly lifted, and I watched the scene unfold with great interest. Humiliated in front of me, Victoria looked pleadingly at Ethan, who supposedly doted on her. Ignoring the situation, she tugged on his sleeve and whined in a saccharine voice, "I did it for you and the baby." Sincere and his son were being unreasonable. I couldn't stand it anymore, so I taught them a lesson. I couldn't help but laugh out loud. She was so glamorous in public, but behind the scenes she was just a pathetic suck-up. Ethan's expression was grim and uncertain. In front of everyone, he slapped Victoria across the face. She was completely stunned. "You bitch, you can't even behave yourself when you're pregnant. Apologize now." The slap made Victoria stumble, and her face flushed bright red. She felt she had lost face in front of me. She screamed at Ethan, "I'm pregnant, and you hit me? Do you believe I'll get rid of this baby?" Hearing her sharp, piercing voice, I suddenly smiled. She prided herself on marrying into wealth, yet she didn't even receive basic respect. As soon as she finished speaking, a dark glint flashed in Ethan's eyes. Furious, he slapped her again on the other side, creating a matching set, and said in a low voice, "Apologize to him." She stared blankly at Ethan, tears of grievance streaming down her face. Her voice trembled uncontrollably as she sobbed, "How could you hit me? What did I do wrong? I'm carrying your child." Walter Hayes waved his hand impatiently and said, "If you can't resolve this, get rid of the baby and get out." Margaret Hayes helped him up, and they slowly disappeared from sight. Victoria stood frozen to the spot as if her feet had taken root, a rare look of confusion on her face. The standoff continued, but I was worried my son's life would be in danger if we delayed any longer. I said coldly, "Handle this as you see fit. I will not be lenient." Ethan panicked instantly. He pushed her to the ground and forced her to apologize to me. He was afraid of the situation escalating, which meant there was definitely something more to it. Victoria's arrogance was completely extinguished. Snot and tears covered her face as she reluctantly apologized to me. After they paid a sum for my son's medical expenses, the matter was finally over. I would settle this score with her slowly. Chapter 6. The next time I saw Victoria Vaughn, she was lying on a hospital bed, groaning in pain. Her pregnant belly was huge as she was wheeled into the operating room. A trail of blood, shockingly dark, dripped from the gurney all the way down the hall. Ethan Hayes followed leisurely behind, not offering a single word of comfort. He just watched coldly as the doctors pushed her into surgery. 40 minutes later, the delivering doctor handed him a small blood bag. Ignoring Victoria's agonized screams from inside the operating room, where she was hemorrhaging from the premature birth, Ethan turned and left without a second thought. Her beautiful dream of being a wealthy man's wife, which had lasted less than a year, was shattered. When Victoria, having barely escaped death, woke up, she was completely alone. A doctor informed her that due to severe bleeding, her uterus had been removed. Even Ethan, the one who signed the consent form for her surgery, was gone. She tried calling every member of the Hayes family, only to find she had been blocked. Even the baby from her womb had vanished. She was on the verge of a complete breakdown. Enduring the pain, she ran out to find someone, and that's when she saw Ethan holding a strange woman. With a pale face, she rushed forward and slapped the woman. Her voice was weak as she cursed. "You little homewrecker, how dare you seduce my husband? I'll tear you apart." Ethan reacted instantly, kicking Victoria to the ground with a look of pure disgust. His face turned cold as he roared, "Get lost, the woman." Lily Scott nestled into Ethan's arms like a delicate bird, deliberately putting on an innocent expression. Her next words sent Victoria into a blind rage. "Darling, does this crazy woman still not know what's happened? Is it really okay to have played her for such a fool?" Mr. and Mrs. Hayes both sneered, laughing. "You idiot. We were only ever deceiving a tart like you who dreams of marrying into a rich family all day. A second-hand woman who's been divorced and has a child from a previous marriage is hardly worthy of my exceptional son. We only put on a little show and let you believe it because your womb was of some use." Victoria's body was extremely weak after childbirth. She now slumped on the ground, powerless. Her face turned blue with rage and her body trembled uncontrollably. She let the Hayes family humiliate her, occasionally kicking her. I was hiding in the hallway, live streaming the event. The person the Hayes family feared most was already on their way. This shocking drama was finally about to reach its climax. Victoria gasped for breath, murmuring, "The baby. Where did my baby go? You've deceived me so terribly. I'm going to kill you." Victoria gritted her teeth and scrambled up from the floor, lunging at Mrs. Hayes, who was closest to her. Mrs. Hayes grinned and grabbed her by the hair, yanking her back down and pinching the flesh on her body with force. Victoria's limbs twitched uncontrollably in pain, the whites of her eyes showing. Just as the operating room light went out, the Hayes family and Lily Scott eagerly crowded around. "Oh, my precious baby, you must be in so much pain. The surgery was a success. Our baby will be just like a normal child from now on. This is wonderful." Lily Scott cried tears of joy, leaning against Ethan. The family was overjoyed, following the doctor who was pushing the hospital bed away. Victoria lay on the floor, disheveled, her eyes vacant. She was laughing and crying at the same time. The truth had pierced her like a sharp knife. It was time for her to taste the pain of betrayal. My first meeting with Isabella Sterling went very well. As fellow spouses who had been cheated on, how could we not stir up some trouble to do justice to the betrayal we had suffered? Inside the hospital room, Victoria was being dragged around by her hair by Ethan. He said viciously, "What are you making a scene for? A promiscuous woman like you has the nerve to cause trouble? If it wasn't to get the cord blood, do you think I would touch a filthy fucking bitch like you? From now on, get the hell away from me. If you dare to appear in front of me again, I'll beat you to death. Do you think you can just climb into our Hayes family?" After speaking, still not satisfied, Ethan slapped her again. He hit her so hard she yelped and screamed like a madwoman. She roared with a hoarse voice, "You animal, hearing this?" Ethan's laughter grew even wilder. Isabella Sterling and I exchanged a look, then kicked the door open and stormed in. The faces of all three members of the Hayes family changed instantly. Chapter 7. Ethan's lips trembled, his face turning ashen as he began to cower. The arrogant and domineering demeanor he had moments ago vanished completely. He asked with a fawning smile, "Wife, what are you doing here?" Forgetting his charade, Ethan's tall frame bent before the imposing Isabella Sterling. Mr. and Mrs. Hayes were so frightened they forgot about their precious grandson and hurried over to fuss over her. It must have been so tiring coming all this way. "Come home with me, and Mom will make you some soup to help you recover." Isabella smiled faintly, her expression unchanged as she slapped each of the three Hayes family members across the face. The trio stood there with red, swollen faces, so humbled they didn't even dare to breathe loudly. "Ethan Hayes, I gave you the honor of being my live-in husband, and you dare take my money to pose as a wealthy heir, tricking two women into having your children." Very clever. As Isabella's words rang out, both Victoria and Lily stared at Ethan in shock. Lily couldn't believe that even after having his child, she was still just the other woman. She flew into a rage, lunging at him and tearing at him, screaming painful curses. "You deceived me. Because of you, I've become a homewrecker that everyone scorns. What about my child? He'll be pointed at and called a bastard for the rest of his life. You ruined my happy life. You're worse than an animal in no time." Ethan's face was covered in bloody scratches. He yelped in pain, clutching his face and jumping around. Mrs. Hayes, feeling sorry for her son, jumped in to fight back on his behalf. But she was quickly overpowered and beaten, her old face soon turning black and blue. Watching this scene, I felt a deep sense of satisfaction. After the Hayes family had been dealt with, Victoria suddenly grabbed my arm, a renewed look of love for me in her eyes. "Honey, let's get back together. I still love you. We still have our son. It was all his fault for seducing me. I promise I'll be a devoted wife and mother from now on." Victoria swore her oath, her eyes shining with determination. Where did she get the confidence to think I would ever forgive her? After her attempt to climb the social ladder failed, her body was ruined, and she was left with nothing. Only then did she remember me, the useless husband she had scorned. I shook her hand off with a look of disgust, feeling nothing but endless revulsion. Seeing my cold attitude, the hope in her eyes died. "Loving me means sleeping with another man late at night? Thinking you've married into wealth, you couldn't wait to divorce me? You even treated our son as a stain on your life. For you to even say the word love, I feel embarrassed for you. It's so fake." Tears welled up in her eyes, and her voice trembled uncontrollably. She shook her head, crying, and choked out an explanation. "It was really him who seduced me, who lured me in. He approached me with a hidden agenda from the very beginning. I'm a victim too, please, can you forgive me?" Seeing Victoria's pathetic state, I felt not a single ripple of emotion in my heart, only a sense of injustice for the loving man I once was. "Hello, we've received a report of a suspected homicide." The arrival of the police interrupted the chaotic scene in the hospital room. Ethan shrank back, trying to hide and play dead, his expression filled with terror. Seeing this, Victoria spat in his direction and said mockingly, "If you have a clear conscience, you have nothing to fear. If you do too many bad things, you'll eventually face retribution." A police officer looked at her with some sympathy and said softly, "Ms. Vaughn, your child has been found." Victoria froze, until the officer handed her a swaddled infant that was already cold to the touch. The officer continued, "The baby was found in a dumpster. There were strangle marks on the neck. The preliminary finding is that the baby was strangled to death." Victoria's hands trembled uncontrollably. She peeled back the blanket for a look, then quickly turned her face away, her eyes bloodshot. Clutching the daughter who had been murdered by her own father, she collapsed to the floor. Tears rolled down her cheeks. Even the hardest of hearts would break at such a tragic sight, let alone Victoria, who had fought for her life to give birth to this child. She broke down completely, hugging her daughter tightly and letting out a heart-wrenching wail. Ethan Hayes was not fit to be called human. A premature baby born at 7 months could have survived, but he had cruelly strangled his own daughter with his own hands and thrown her into a dumpster. His level of cruelty was staggering. Victoria carefully placed the baby to one side and lunged at Ethan like an out-of-control beast. "You won't even spare your own flesh and blood, are you even human?" In her frenzied state, Victoria grabbed his neck and squeezed, refusing to let go no matter how much Mr. and Mrs. Hayes tried to pull her off. Seeing Ethan's face turn a deathly purple, the police finally intervened. Such an inhuman act was like a thorn stuck in the hearts of everyone present. Chapter 8. Ethan Hayes was taken away by the police for investigation. Lily Scott, who had given the Hayes family their heir, disappeared overnight. Isabella Sterling took back everything she had given the Hayes family. Without her financial support, they were reduced to ordinary people. The investigation laid bare all of Ethan's crimes. The reason Victoria had given birth prematurely at 7 months was that he had secretly been giving her drugs to induce labor. His son was suffering from aplastic anemia, and his condition was worsening. They couldn't wait for a full-term birth. They needed the cord blood to save his life. No wonder the handsome and seemingly wealthy Ethan had targeted the married Victoria. He had been fishing with multiple lines at the time, but only Victoria was willing to sleep with him. As for Lily, the mother of his precious son, he couldn't bear to let her take the risk, to gamble with her life for a chance to save their child. To think that the heartless and disloyal Ethan could actually love someone. It was both laughable and tragic. In my past life, his entire plan was cut short when he was drained to death by Victoria. It was his own desperation to get someone pregnant quickly to save his precious son that led to his demise. This time, I prevented the framing from happening and let Victoria go to find her own happiness. Yet she chose to trust the deceitful Ethan once again. She deserved the fate she got. Ethan was sentenced to death. I heard that in prison he kept shouting that he had done nothing wrong. He claimed that since he gave his daughter life, It was his right to decide whether she lived or died. He tried various methods to appeal and absolve himself of guilt. But Isabella used her connections to suppress all his efforts. An animal like him didn't deserve to live. As for Mr. and Mrs. Hayes, they were now old and reduced to picking through trash to support their precious grandson, often going hungry. Half a month later, a haggard-looking Victoria appeared at my home, holding our son's hand. She guiltily avoided my angry gaze, looking down and ruffling our son's fluffy hair. She knelt down and forced a gentle smile. "Miles, you're such a good boy. Go to your room and do your homework. Your dad and I have something to talk about." Our son reluctantly let go of her hand and obediently went to his room, closing the door behind him. The atmosphere was tense. I looked at Victoria, feeling exhausted. In this life, all I wanted was to get as far away from her as possible, to never see her again. I would raise our son alone. Her head hung low, and she suddenly dropped to her knees. The impact made her already pale face turn even whiter. Her voice was weak, laced with a plea. "I've had a lot of time to think. It was my fault for being materialistic and abandoning you both. I fell into a huge trap and broke your and our son's hearts. The damage I've caused can't be undone, but I'm begging you to give me a chance. Let me spend the rest of my life making it up to you and our son. I don't dare ask for your forgiveness. From now on, I'll work tirelessly to take care of you both. I'll handle everything at home." She finished speaking and looked at me with an expectant expression. I clenched my fists in anger, a bitter smile on my lips. My chest felt tight, as if stuffed with cotton, both numb and painful. How dare she even mention forgiveness? Her little scheme was so obvious. She wanted to play the role of the lady of the house, to gradually make our son and me accept and forgive her. My gaze turned to ice. I rejected her coldly. "Don't worry, you will never deserve forgiveness in this lifetime. The scars you've left will always be there, a constant reminder." She looked as if she had been struck by lightning, her body going limp. Tears streamed down her face. Victoria cried and shook her head, trying to grab my hand. "I regret it, sincere," she sobbed. I watched her agonizing display with cold eyes. The bone-deep hatred I felt for her didn't diminish in the slightest. In my past life, in my final moments, was I not in agony too? We were husband and wife for 8 years, yet she could be so cruel as to frame me. The tears she shed were nothing but crocodile tears. Seeing that I was unmoved, her expression cold, Victoria stood up from the floor and began searching for something. She rushed into the kitchen and held a knife to her neck. The pressure of the blade drew a few drops of blood. She winced in pain, her expression a mix of threat and plea. "If I have to leave you and our son, I'll die." I let out a flat "oh" and calmly watched her performance. My utter lack of emotion enraged her. She pressed the knife harder. Beads of blood dripped onto the floor. She hissed in pain. With a determined glint in her eye, she added, "If you don't agree, I'll die right here in front of you." I nodded slightly, gesturing for her to go ahead. "Die, go on. Die. I'd love for you to die." I hated being threatened, and besides, she would never have the guts to actually do it. Humiliated and enraged, Victoria threw the knife to the ground, her eyes once again welling up with tears. She screamed hysterically, "What do I have to do for you to forgive me?" I lifted my eyelids slightly and spat out 2 cold words, "Go die." I hated her to my very core. If it weren't for our son, I would have killed her with my own hands long ago. Those who betray true love deserve to die. I threw the disgraced Victoria out. I wouldn't believe a single word of her insincere repentance. Unable to bear her constant harassment, I took my son and moved to a new city. From then on, we were separated by mountains and seas, never to meet again in this lifetime.